Over the last decade, the red pill has become more than just an idea. It's become a movement, an entire worldview, and a new religion of sorts for an entire generation of frustrated and disillusioned men. And like every ideology, it begins with a powerful promise. Take this pill, and you'll finally wake up and discover the truth. But what if the moment that you swallow that truth, you step into another illusion? What if the red pill isn't awakening men from the matrix, but rather initiating them into another form of the matrix? In this episode, we're going to be looking beneath the surface of the red pill to understand why this ideology is so attractive and so magnetic to men right now. What deep needs is it meeting for the masculine psyche? And why ultimately it traps men in the very same patterns that we are trying to transcend. If you're new here, welcome to Awakened Evolution. My name is Jasper Brown, and in my late 20s, I took the red pill, so to speak. And so this critique that I'll be offering today is coming from someone who has been on the inside and who has also chosen to evolve beyond what the red pill offers. I've had the opportunity to work with and coach hundreds of men, many of whom have been influenced or bought in to the red pill. And I've also conducted a very deep study of cult dynamics and ideological capture as a result of me spending 6 years inside a New Age spiritual cult-like group and eventually leaving that as well. So I've spent a lot of time analyzing how the mind makes meaning and where it gets stuck. And I say this because I'm proposing that this analysis that I'm going to be giving is not just a reactionary opinion piece or a hot take. It's an analysis from above and not one from below, from ignorance, but rather from a deep understanding. So that's what I'm going to try to transmit today. So let's break down and understand the red pill to set this up properly. The red pill, it's not just a corner of the internet anymore. It's become a fully fledged, full-blown worldview. It's almost a masculine counter movement born out of frustration with feminism and postmodernism and the broader cultural confusion that we have at the moment in our society around gender, power, and identity. At its core, the red pill is built around a few but very potent ideas. And these are that men and women are fundamentally different by nature, that biology determines behavior. There's alpha and beta. It's often broken down into these very clear distinctions, that sexual power dynamics govern relationships, that men must become high value or alpha, in other words, in order to win love and win in life. It also asserts that emotion is weakness and power is something that we get by controlling ourselves and others and the outcomes that we want. And it kind of paints the world as a kind of jungle. Men must adapt and evolve and compete and dominate, or they're going to be eaten alive in a ruthless sexual marketplace. And to many men, this feels like truth, because for a lot of men today, the red pill arrives at a time when we feel very lost, unseen, and blamed for everything that's wrong in society. Most of us have grown up being told that masculinity is toxic in one way or another, that leadership is a patriarchal structure of hierarchy and order, and that their natural instincts or our natural needs and desires are in some way dangerous or oppressive or wrong. And so naturally, we as men grow up and we're confused. We're confused about how to relate to women. We haven't received good mentorship or role modeling in life about how to lead. We're confused about how to express our emotions and how to find purpose. All of this in a world that no longer seems to have a clear role for men, or men's issues seem to often be suppressed or added as an afterthought, especially in the context of the last 100 years, let's say, with the rise of feminism. Women's issues have been front and center somehow, and men's issues got pushed way down the list. So when men come across red pill content, it feels like a lifeline, naturally, because it offers clarity, rules, a sense of order and logic to the chaos of the cultural landscape that's constantly shifting around us. It validates our pain, the heartbreak of rejection, the grief of divorce, the humiliation of being emasculated, and the quiet despair of just not feeling desired, not feeling wanted, not feeling needed, especially by the feminine. So the red pill acknowledges what mainstream culture often denies, which is that men are suffering too. Men feel lost too. And that's why it resonates so deeply in the psyche of the modern man. Because it doesn't try to fix them, it doesn't pamper them. It tells them that the world is broken and that their pain makes sense. And in doing so, it gives men language. It gives them language for the dynamics that they have always sensed and felt and been at the mercy of somehow, but struggled to articulate. Language that helps them to make sense of why their relationships have been failing, why women always pull away, why their efforts to be nice or good men never seem to earn respect or win the desire of women. But here's the paradox. The same ideas that start out as liberating often end up becoming dysfunctional, limiting. Because every ideology begins as medicine. There's always that promise in the beginning. It meets a certain need, it heals a certain wound, it fills the void, gives us a sense of belonging and meaning. But when we start to mistake that ideology for absolute truth, it becomes a cage. It stops being a map and it starts to become more like a prison for the mind. And to explain why it becomes a prison for the mind, I want to break this down from a developmental lens. So if you've been listening to my channel for a while, you know that I'm a big fan of maps of meaning making and models like spiral dynamics and Ken Wilber's integral theory. Basically, these maps have revealed that our values are shaped across time and across culture and a human life, and that these value sets can be broken down through developmental stages that range from 1 to 8, and show us the way that development unfolds, both culturally, collectively, and individually in the context of our own life. And so when we look at the red pill is a masculine set of values typically associated with stage blue and stage orange. Stage blue is number 4, orange is number 5 in terms of the hierarchy. Now, stage blue is basically about order, hierarchy, gender roles, traditional values, moral certainty. It's typically more conservative, tends to be religious, or emerged from the religious periods of human history where society really valued those things, that hierarchy, that order, that tradition was necessary to help stabilize a certain level of cultural development. Stage orange we can think of as coming online in the Industrial Revolution, the emergence of a real sort of capitalist economy. Values are based around things like achievement, status, competition, sexual success, and proof of self-worth. It's very individualistic. And we can see that a lot of mainstream culture is still very orange. We are essentially like the center of gravity for most of humanity is still stage blue and stage orange. Fundamentalist religion, hierarchy and order, achievement, success, competition, late stage capitalism. And so the red pill is really clinging to that center of gravity, that conservative center of gravity, because we have emerged more recently, let's say in the last 50, 60 years, as I said, with feminism emerging in the last 100 years, this is what we call stage green, which is stage 6. And stage green is pluralistic, it's postmodern. This is where things like gender start to be more fluid. We start to see that social constructions start to become deconstructed. Truth is something that becomes more relative. And traditional masculine identity starts to collapse or starts to get deconstructed at stage green, starts to be challenged with stage green. And we've seen that. We've seen that with feminism. Feminism has essentially liberated women, and we've moved into a much more open kind of the values that are starting to be pursued by a lot of people in the world are much more inclusive. There's this idea of diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI. And that's challenging. This new emergence of culture is challenging the traditional norms and traditional hierarchies and traditional structures of power, which obviously is threatening. It's destabilizing by its very nature. And we've seen that with the emergence of the woke movement. The woke movement starts to deconstruct everything and say everything's relative. Gender is a social construct. We can we can basically dissolve the boxes that we've drawn around identity, and we can do what we want with them. We can change them. Just because we have these terms of masculine and feminine doesn't mean they're ultimately true. We can redraw those lines if we want to. And within that is a critique, the old way is not working, essentially. The traditional way that we've been doing things is broken, or it's limiting us in major ways. It's having undesirable consequences. It's not giving us the equality, the fairness, the inclusivity that we crave. And so that is destabilizing. That is destabilizing for people that have created an identity, a fixed identity around the idea of being a man. It's threatening. And within that is also like within that critique is also like a summoning. It's a call. Men, there's a lot of critique from the feminine into saying the masculine needs to transform. The way that we've been doing things, patriarchy, is dysfunctional, it's toxic, and it needs to change. And so men often feel like we've been bullied, or we're being shamed into changing into this modern whatever the fuck it is. And so in many ways, that's why I say the red pill is a reaction, is a counterbalancing, is an opposition to this kind of very liberal, woke, stage green emergence within the culture. And in a sense, we can see that the red pill is like a reincarnation of traditional masculine values dressed up in the language of personal development and evolutionary science. It's a necessary and inevitable, somehow, response to the collapse of these older kind of identity structures. And the emergence of stage green has really brought this need for egalitarianism, emotional availability, emotional intelligence, therapeutic modalities, sensitivity, inclusivity, empathy. You can see the emergence of a lot of therapeutic modalities. All of this is very stage green. It's like stage green was basically the hippie movement in the 60s when we started to care about the environment. We are one world, one planet, all people matter, all races matter, all genders matter. Everyone gets to be, so it's more inclusive in a certain sense. It's more caring. And so this is an incredibly important developmental gain for humanity as a set of values that starts to emerge within the culture. And at the same time, for many men, it's created a lot of confusion. The rules that used to define manhood, hierarchy, strength, protection, provision, order, clearly defined roles, these have been blurred, and in many ways, they've often been vilified. Many men have internalized this confusion as a form of guilt. They've been taught to distrust their instincts. They've been taught to suppress their desires. They've been shamed. Shame for being a man. Many of us men feel like there's something wrong with me just because I'm a fucking man. It's painful. And so the red pill rushes in like an antidote to that pain. It promises to restore order to the chaos of stage green. Because stage green, as we've seen, it can go too far. One of the problems with stage green is it wants to deconstruct everything and do away with conservative values and tradition and say all of that is just social constructions. We can redraw those lines, we can dissolve it, we can build something better. But one of the blind spots of stage green is that it fails to see the necessity and the need that existed in stage blue and stage orange. That there was a deep developmental necessity to tradition, for example. That there was something of value within the hierarchy and the order and the traditions of old, or religion, for example. Stage green just wants to do away with all of that without realizing that those values and those traditions and the order was there for a reason. Just because we can deconstruct everything doesn't mean we should. Or if we are going to deconstruct things, we need to do that in a mature way. We need to give people time to adjust. It's like the trans movement came along and said, gender is a social construct. We can change our genders if we, based on what we feel. I can call myself a man or a woman. I can identify however I want. And we have men who have transitioned going into women's bathrooms, and that's supposed to be fine. And on some level, yes, that's something we can do, but it's complex. It's nuanced. This is triggering for people. This is very, very threatening for people. And just because we can do it, it doesn't mean it's responsible or mature to do it. And if there is a way to do it, maybe it's something we need to slow down and give people time to adjust and to form, to metabolize these changes. Because generally people change very slowly. It takes a long time for people to adjust to drastic changes in the way that they make sense of the world or the way that we construct identity. This is very destabilizing things for people to just go and casually deconstruct. So postmodernism has come along and blurred all of these boundaries. And the red pill is a way of somehow reasserting some form of clarity. It's an attempt to reconstruct or reconfigure a solid masculine identity where men have been told to dissolve their identity or change their identity. And so, of course, in the beginning, when men find the red pill, it feels liberating. It feels like a lifeline. It feels like something. Here is structure. Here is direction for me in a time of absolute chaos and confusion culturally. It's like men finally get a flag to plant in the soil to stand alongside after years of feeling like their needs, their opinions, their pain haven't been important, and they've had to censor themselves, suppress themselves. So in many ways, it feels like a reclamation of the masculine spine. And at the same time, developmentally speaking, it's also, in some ways, it's a regression. And that regression, because we're going back to more traditional norms or values, that regression is actually disguised or framed as an awakening, as an evolution. Because when we awaken to a new form of truth or a new frame for understanding reality, we often swing from one extreme to the opposite extreme. So if we've been too soft, we become overly hard. If we've been too selfless, we become centered. If we become too emotional, we'll swing the other way and we'll become extremely stoic. And this pendulum swing is the thing that a lot of men mistake for growth. The red pill gives men the structure that they never got, but it also freezes them inside that particular structure. It says that this is the truth, this is how women are, this is how men should be, and just like in any religion or any ideology, that sense of certainty feels very powerful in the beginning, until it starts to become a limitation. So in spiral dynamics terms, the red pill, the major strength there is its clarity. It's giving structure. It's giving direction. It's giving a sense of certainty, some principles and rules to follow. That's good. But its weakness, from my perspective, is its lack of integration. It rejects the emotional intelligence of stage green. It sees it as woke, delusional. It's basically created a shadow out of stage green because it can't integrate the qualities and the necessities and the gifts that stage green is trying to bring into the cultural landscape. And that's a problem. Just as stage green struggles to appreciate and integrate the benefits and the gifts and the necessities of stage blue and traditional religious systems or teachings. So it's important to see that that goes both ways. It's not like any side is perfect, but rather we want to see that each of these systems or each of these tiers are lenses or sets of values that people ascribe to and hold. And by seeing these different values, we can understand the culture wars. And it makes, and what we see happening online, these, woke, feminist, smashed by red pill alpha, like these kind of battles that we see playing out in the online space or in the world, they start to become more, you start to understand what's actually going on there, where actually there's stage wars. And that really helps us to analyze and understand what is happening there. What are the limitations? Why, when I understood this, when I started to piece these things together and see the world through these lenses, I was like, holy shit. It makes so much more sense now. And so it's important as well to understand that there's still more levels above stage green. There's stage yellow, which is number 7. And stage yellow is about systems thinking. It's about integral or integrative understanding, seeing the world as one big system or a whole series of systems that overlap and include. And so we start with a system, we start to see everything, how it all connects. And spiral dynamics or Ken Wilber's integral theory, these are systems that help us to understand it all. So that's the power of stage yellow, which is also known as tier 2 cognition, where our understanding raises up and we start to see all of the levels of the spiral below. We start to see all of these stage wars happening, and we start to see the reactions and counter reactions and see everything through that lens. And all of reality starts to make sense. That's why it's tier 2 cognition. And that's a major developmental leap. But a lot of red pill philosophy kind of mocks that, doesn't really take that seriously. It might dabble, cherry pick certain systems for understanding, but not really take that all the way. The red pill also fears the dissolution of identity. And at the final stage, or the higher stage, which is called stage turquoise, number 8, the 8th stage. This is what we would call the unitive stage, or the spiritual, the most spiritual, because ultimately all spiritual teachings lead to the understanding that reality is one complete whole, one entire non-dual reality, not dual, non-dual, not two. Everything is one. And so at the ultimate stage, the turquoise stage, we reach unity, where everything is included, nothing is left out. But in order to sort of really merge, you need to dissolve. You need to let go of identity. You need to be prepared to Let go of all your ideas. Let go of all of those things that kept you safe and gave you a sense of structure and order and hierarchy. And so that's quite threatening. And so red pill will also make a shadow out of that and call it spiritual woo. Because for men who are attracted to and drawn to the red pill, the need is for the world to be simple again. The world is already chaotic. The world is already very confusing, unfair, not meeting the needs that we have. And so the longing and the need is for things to be predictable, for binaries. That's why things like alpha and beta become attractive to a man who is in the red pill, because it reduces the complexity of reality into very simple black and white things, categories, which are ultimately very knowable and trustable, simple. It's a reduction that serves a specific need. It serves a specific purpose. And there's definitely been times in my life when I needed to reduce the complexity of reality down into very simple categories. That's why we have these categories. It makes reality easy to understand. Us versus them, right versus wrong, black versus white, masculine versus feminine, alpha, beta. To think in these kind of dualistic binary terms has a certain attraction to it, doesn't it? It's easier to hold that rather than to just say everything is one, man. Nothing means anything, whatever you want. Like, everything is fluid. It's all consciousness. That can be very ungrounded and very untethered to what feels like a reality. But the crucial thing to understand here is that evolution doesn't go backwards. Consciousness doesn't go backwards. Reality is moving forwards in time. Consciousness is evolving. Culture is evolving. We can't go back. The world has changed. Women, the feminine has changed. The masculine needs to evolve if we're going to keep up. If we're going to create healthy relationships, if we're going to find a path through the chaos. It makes sense that we reach back for tradition and religion and conservatism, especially when things are changing so quickly, and that's threatening. It makes sense, doesn't it? But change is happening. Change is happening, and we need to evolve. Evolution is happening. It's one of the functions of life. It is the driving force of life. Things will continue to evolve, and we need to evolve. And it's important when we see the necessity of the red pill, we see the needs that it's meeting, and we also see the limitations. So it's amazing that men find a set of teachings or philosophies that help them to rediscover their discipline, to create clarity, to give them structure and direction. That's great. But if we lose access to empathy, if we're cut off from compassion, there's a problem there. Stage green is trying to teach us something. Stage green is a necessity. And we can't just have power without presence. We can't have success without meaning. We don't want sex without intimacy. Many men in the red pill have transcended weakness, or they've found a set of things which help them to feel strong again, and that's great. But one of the missing things for me was love. Yes, it's great to be strong. It's great to feel powerful. But we need connection to love. We need to guide that strength needs to be guided by something. We need to have a connection to and be tethered to the sacredness of life, to the union between the masculine and the feminine polarities. There's a deep, deep, deep relationship there. And the red pill for me strips a lot of that nuance, strips a lot of that sacredness, and alienates or disconnects us from a lot of that heartfelt, intuitive, emotional, sentimental, devotional capacities of the heart. And that's why, for me, developmentally speaking, the red pill is a bit of a halfway house. It's a crucial step for men who need to rebuild their spine and reclaim their power and build themselves a strong foundation, but it's not the final destination. It's a stage. It's a stage that restores structure. And that structure, that identity structure, is really important, because without that structure or stability of the foundation, the integration that I'm talking about here can't take place, can't actually occur. So for me, the tragedy with the red pill is that men stop there. They find the red pill and they become overly attached to the red pill, just like any religion or cult. They don't see the problems with the red pill. They don't see the limitations. Because they come in the basket. It has some good things and it also has some bad things. Or it has some things that are very useful and some things that also create limitation. And that's problematic when we buy into any kind of ideological structure or system, receive that kind of awakening, but then kind of stay stuck. Because from my perspective, the real awakening is the kind that transcends ideology. I mean, that's what awakening is. When you have an awakening, you will typically let go of everything. You will let go of all of the beliefs, all the ideology, all of the egoic self. There's nothing, you let go of everything. You can't cling to anything. You have to, when you cross that threshold, you got to let it all go. And so we want to create a sense of identity that can hold paradox, that doesn't cling to certainty. It absorbs and integrates the need for certainty. It builds that foundation that I'm talking about. If we look at it from like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have the bottom parts of the pyramid, but we need to be able to go beyond that. So we need to be able to hold paradox. We need to embrace strength and softness, logic and intuition, power and love. We don't need to dominate. We need to understand. We need to accept. Because, dominance is a form of asserting control and getting what we want and taking it by force. And that, at a certain level of development, is necessary. And in certain situations, that might be necessary. It was certainly necessary in human history to get humanity to the point where it is now. We needed to, that would be stage red, which is below stage blue, which is stage 3, which is all about power. We need to transcend and include, including all of the stages. We're not getting rid of anything. We're evolved. We're including everything that we are. We're integrating everything, and we're also adding on top. And the red pill for me is too constrained. It gets us, it gives us something, but it also keeps us, because it's created a shadow out of stage green. It resists. It opposes that. It vilifies that. It rejects the value of it. It misses it. And that's what makes it limiting. So the red pill, in a strange way, is both a teacher and a test. It's a dojo. It's a dojo that inspires and trains men to find their backbone. And it's also the gateway, or a test, that challenges them to go beyond that, to open their heart. And most men that I see entering into the red pill are failing the second test. They get the backbone, but they struggle to open the heart. They struggle to start to open towards stage green. However, for those of us who can pass through that second gateway, who can move beyond the ideology of the red pill into the embodied wisdom, for me, that's where true masculine evolution begins. And this is what happened to me. This is exactly what happened to me. When I found the red pill, it was all of the things that I described so far. It was the antidote to my people-pleasing and nice guy syndrome. It gave me direction and frame to take back my power. It helped me to integrate and understand the frustration that I was experiencing with the feminine and how to start getting better results, and seeing the kind of sexual marketplace and the games that were being played there. That was a helpful lens. I listened to Andrew Tate. I read The Rational Male. I started to wise up to the different mechanics that were at play with women and in the sexual marketplace. And there was power in that. I got into jiu-jitsu. I started training. I started learning how to fight. Andrew Tate, that was something he gave me. There was value in that. It made me a better man. There was power there that I needed to reclaim and to integrate. I had to reclaim my spine. I had to figure out how to show the fuck up and start pursuing success. It drove me to be more productive in my business. It pushed a lot of this development in me. Amazing, beautiful, beautiful things. Powerful things, powerful aspects of my masculinity that I needed to reclaim, that I needed to evolve and own. And at the same time, it also led me into resentment, cynicism, controlling dynamics in my relationship, transactional nature of the kind of interactions with the feminine. I started to, treat my woman and my relationship in not the best way, because I was cut off from myself emotionally. I started to mistrust. I started to be more jealous. I started to be more paranoid. I pushed her away. I was more emotionally avoidant. I became lonelier. Because there was a lack of vulnerability in me, and I started to harden myself and be more skeptical and more cynical towards the feminine, towards my relationship. It nearly destroyed my relationship. I started to think of, if this doesn't work out with her, I'll just I'll just spin some more plates. I'll just, jump on the apps, get a bunch more girlfriends, why not have multiple girlfriends? Why? All of this stuff started to bubble up inside of me, and I started to see the world and women in a darker way somehow. It started to reduce everything down to this kind of binary black and white thinking that was problematic. I started to treat love like a game of power. in many ways. And the moment that I did that, the sacredness of it died. The paradox here is that the more that you try to control the feminine, the less real connection you're going to experience. The less the feminine is going to open towards you. The less depth, the less you'll have less intimacy. There's going to be less love. Because control and domination is the opposite of love. Love, the experience of love, is acceptance, is not needing to change anything, is seeing the sameness. It's a state of coherence. And when you try to dominate or control, that's not love. And so, of course, the feminine will recoil and push away a man who behaves like that or who relates like that. You will never discover the depth of intimacy and love that you can experience with a woman if you relate to her and relate to the feminine with control and with domination, with fear, with resentment, or a transactional relationship, or way of relating. And that almost pushed her away entirely, nearly cost me the relationship. When I saw that that was what was happening, I started to question the red pill. I started to be like, is this working? And then I started to look at a lot of the gurus online and see, these guys are also not having the kind of relationship that I'm longing for. I actually want something different. I want a deep, sacred union with the feminine. So what am I missing here? What is this philosophy missing? And ultimately, I realized that there was a higher stage of relating to myself. There was deeper ways of relating to the feminine, ones that liberated rather than tried to enslave. And so let's talk about what that looks like beyond the red pill and the integration and awakening of what I call integrated masculinity. Because at the higher stages, it's not about dominance. That's a lower stage developmental need and characteristic and trait. At the higher stages, remember, we're moving towards wholeness. We're moving towards love. We're moving towards unity. So the masculine values and qualities that come online as we evolve towards higher stages of development is the integration. It's strength and sensitivity. Remember, we're holding paradox. We can have both. We can be strong and sensitive. We can have structure and we can flow. We can be connected to the truth and we can love. And in fact, love and truth is the same thing. We need to remember that the developmental path is not black and white. That these dualities, these distinctions of alpha, beta, liberal, conservative, masculine, feminine, black and white, this is part of the spectrum. The full spectrum and the entire spiral. And when you open yourself to understanding and discovering that you can be whoever you want and whatever the fuck you want to be, you get to draw the lines, you get to define yourself, what those terms mean, you get to open yourself to flexibility and fluidity. You get to experience the full spectrum. You can be whatever the fuck you want to be, and that's liberating. That's liberating. And with that there's nuance. There's so much nuance there. Black and white thinking is binary, dualistic, and limited. when we expand and we start to see not in terms of black and white, but, spectrum. Race is a spectrum. Gender is a spectrum. Masculine and feminine, they're part of a whole spectrum. Many of the qualities that we think of as being a good man is feminine qualities. Many of the qualities that make a woman strong and inspiring and determined in life are masculine qualities. Of course, we can go too far in one direction, both ways. But what I want is to have access to the full spectrum. And at the end of the day, real men don't need to prove that they're masculine. They don't need to go around beating their chest, because they embody it effortlessly through their presence, through their integrity, and by being just radically authentic. That's what be yourself really means. That's what real confidence is derived from, is being so fucking comfortable in your own skin that it doesn't matter what people think. It matters what you think. It doesn't matter what society tells you. It matters what you tell yourself. So what I'm trying to transmit here is this idea that in order to claim full sovereignty over ourselves, we need to be able to see the spectrum. We need to be able to understand the spiral and see these different stages of development. We need to be able to not cling to any one system, frame, ideology, or belief system, but rather we want to be able to transcend and include all of them. Because there is truth. There's necessary truths in every frame, or every system, or every ideological set of beliefs. There's truth in all of them. And by clinging to one set, we limit ourselves. And by being blindly absorbed in one set, we are often ignorant and miss the limitations, the parts of it that are not helping us, the negative consequences. Just as I, in my relationship, discovered what was true, I discovered some things which were useful. It helped me fill in some missing gaps in my development. And at the same time, by onboarding that belief system, I also encountered roadblocks. And so the problem was the buying in wholesale, tunnel vision. And it's the same with any ideology. You can become a fundamental. You could, if you pursue any religion, if you zoom in and you cling to that one religious doctrine or that one book or one specific teacher, you miss the full spectrum. It's just one frame for discovering what's true. And ultimately, Awakened Evolution, this channel, is about discovering what's true. And so the opposite of that is locking ourselves into one paradigm, one set of beliefs, one set of values, one lens for seeing the world. My view is that if we want to discover what's ultimately true, we need to include every single lens that we can, and to figure out a system for navigating and assessing and sort of like passing through to extract the droplets of gold from every perspective and use all of those little lenses or perspectives to form a really big picture, the ultimate big picture understanding of ourselves and reality. For me, that's the most logical thing to do, because I want to discover what's true. And when we begin this inquiry, we don't know what's true. We don't know who to believe. We don't know which lens to look through. We don't know which teacher to follow. We don't know which guru has got the answers. And we don't know who's full of shit. We don't know who to believe. So we have to have a certain epistemic humility. We need to be humble in the fact that we don't know. And from that humbleness and from that curiosity and that open-mindedness, then we can start to discover what's true. But in order to do that, we need to be able to look at everything and pull everything apart, see the values, see the limitations, and integrate what we need so we can keep moving to higher and higher stages. So the question that I want you to sit with and wrestle with and contemplate is, what ideology or identity have I mistaken for truth? What are the limits of the frames that I have onboarded and I believe? What are the truths? What are the limitations of my specific ideology? Because we all have ideology. It's very rare that you have a person that's non-ideological. So whether it's masculine, feminine, red pill, blue pill, black pill, incel, woke, religious, or some kind of cult that you've been a part of, it's really important that we deconstruct those identity structures. What are the beliefs? What are the principles? What are the rules? What are the axioms that I'm following? And how can I objectify those? And not just look through them, not just be completely bought into them, but how can I zoom out? How can I see them for what they are? It's extremely powerful. One of the most powerful things you can do for your process of making sense. And if this work is something that you vibe with, you might like to come and join my men's community, the Conscious Masculine. It's what I consider to be a full spectrum approach towards men's development, beyond ideology, beyond any kind of binary system. It's about an integrative approach towards men's personal growth and development. That's what I'm trying to build there. And we've got a really awesome group of dudes who meet every single week and deconstruct stuff and talk about this stuff and build the skills to be able to just be more integrated, functional, healthy, powerful men. It's awesome. And if you want to dive deeper and you have a personal set of specific issues, you're up against the limitations that you have, the lack of skills in relationship or just in your own process of figuring shit out, figuring out your life, figuring out your direction, figuring out your purpose, figuring out who the fuck you are as a man and what you're here to do, and you are stuck in that process, you might like to consider reaching out for coaching with me. I love bringing this developmental lens and deconstructing and finding a very strategic approach towards development that helps you as a man to break through whatever level of difficulty you're approaching. And I bring a shit ton of experience working with men into those containers. It's my deepest work that I get to do one-on-one. So if that resonates, you'll find the links to those things below this episode. Book in a call with me and let's connect and see if we're a good fit. And I would really appreciate it if you can leave a review for the podcast, leave a comment. All of that stuff really, really helps me to grow this channel. And I love hearing your feedback and what resonated with you about these episodes. So thank you for those of you that have done that. So I'm going to start to wrap up here. And lastly, I just want to leave you with a final frame. As you go through this process of sense making and deconstruction and updating your worldview and your understanding, you might notice that you've been caught in an ideology, a religion, a cult, or you've just been dogmatic about a certain specific set of beliefs. I've been super dogmatic. I've been ashamed of how I've behaved in the past and how self-righteous I was. I was a bit of a dick. I hurt people. I hurt myself. I want to say don't be ashamed, but I think it's important to feel the shame. I feel the shame. I mean, obviously, it's a part of growth. It's a part of your development that you will stumble, you will fall, you will make mistakes, and that's how we learn, right? And that's necessary. And it's also really important that we actually feel the impact of that. When I look back at how I behaved when I was in the cult-like group that I was a part of, when I was in and absorbed in Red Pill, I was dogmatic. I was self-righteous. I thought I was king shit. And I'm ashamed, it's cringe. It's peak cringe when I look at how I was behaving, the things that I was saying, the attitude that I had towards my partner. Cringe. And that has been a huge part of my journey, being able to metabolize the cringe, being able to sit in the shame of it, being like, I was a fanboy. I was a Tate fanboy for a while. I was ideological. I was spouting a lot of stuff, overly confident, way too confident, thought I knew it all, didn't really know that much. And that's part of the path, right? First, we have to believe in something. We have to buy into it. That's what happens. We're looking for meaning. We're searching for meaning. We're trying to make sense of reality. And of course, we're going to onboard a bunch of beliefs and ideologies and frames of reference to make sense of reality. That's part of how the human ego functions. The critical thing to understand is that we need to remember that we are moving through stages of development. And as you move up stages of development, that process, you've reached a new stage of development when the subject of the stage that you're in becomes the object of the next stage. So when I was in the red pill, I was looking through the red pill axioms and values and that ideology. I was making sense of the world with these kind of, looking at things like the sexual marketplace, looking at hypergamy. Women are hypergamous. There's alphas and there's beta males. And I raised above that. I went to the next stage because I started to be able to see that those axioms or those beliefs were just a belief. That's just a lens that I was looking through. So that was the subject, the thing that I was looking through, and that I evolved to a higher stage when I could make those subjects into objects. I can witness them. I can see that was just a belief, that was just a lens that I was putting on like a pair of glasses, and I was looking through them and seeing the world like that. This is why meditation is so powerful as a practice, because it trains you to objectify your thoughts and your emotions and your body sensations. Because instead of just being ruled by your emotions, you're able to see your emotions as a part of you, something that's happening for you or within you, but you're not completely ruled by them. That's what it means to turn a subjective experience into an objective thing that we can witness. And that is why it's powerful. That's why we need to be able to zoom out. That's why we need to be able to witness our beliefs, our ideologies, and to sort of deconstruct our worldview, to be able to objectify the way that we're actually making sense of everything. That's what moves us up an entire stage of the spiral. That's what it really means to get to tier 2 cognition, is we're able to objectify all of our beliefs and our ideologies and our sense-making schemes and see the way that that works. That's why it's really important to get to stage yellow, where we can start to see everything through the lens of systems, through an integral systemic lens. And this is exactly what happened to me when I woke up to the fact that I had joined a cult or a cult-like group. I'd been radicalized. I'd swallowed the red pill. Hook, line, and sinker. I swallowed it completely, thought that was the absolute truth. I'd found the one path. I bought into it completely, couldn't see the problems, couldn't see the limitations, couldn't see the shadows or the blind spots. And so I became an ideologue. I became a zealot. But now, since I've decompressed and deprogrammed myself, I can turn that process into an objective experience that I was a part of. That was something that I went through. That was the lens that I was looking through. So instead of getting lost in the content, I actually can see the structure that's occurring there. And now that I've seen that structure working within myself, I see it everywhere in the world, in all the people that I talk to. I start to become aware of the way that my mind is constructing meaning, or the way that minds in general construct meaning. And that's a specific stage of development. That's construct awareness that also comes online when we hit tier 2 cognition. If you want to learn more about that, go and watch my episode or listen to my episode on spiral dynamics, breaking down the whole spiral. It's super powerful. So for me, developmentally speaking, joining a cult and then leaving a cult was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it helped me to move up an entire stage of development and unlock this superpower of my mind to be able to see the entire spiral, to be able to see the way that most people look at reality through specific lenses. And most people stay their entire life in one stage, in the same stage. So moving up a stage is a big deal. It's something that you should aspire towards. It's something that will completely change your life and how you interpret life and how you live your life. And I just want to mention here that higher stages are not better, lower stages are not worse. That's in itself a black and white duality. But higher stages are more inclusive. They are more complete. They contain more of the truth. They tend to hold more complexity and more nuance. Higher stages still have their shadows. They still have their problems. They're by no means perfect, but they are more complete. So the goal here with understanding and deconstructing the red pill isn't to reject masculinity. It's not to reject the values and the needs and the beautiful things that come when we meet those values and those needs. But rather what I'm trying to help you understand is that what we conceive of as the red pill, or just masculinity in general, is a frame. It's a lens. It's a set of values, it's a set of beliefs, it's a set of axioms and a way of relating to life. Yes, it is a social construct, but it's a very useful one. It's one of the primary categories or typologies that humanity has experienced since the beginning of time. It's half of the world's population is looking at the world through that lens. And what we consider as masculine is experienced at all levels of the spiral. All stages of development have different ways of relating to the masculine. And so if we're mapping and making sense of reality, we need to integrate this. We need to understand this. We need to include all of these different stages of masculine development. And essentially, we could say that there are 8 stages of masculine development. There's one for each level of the spiral. So what we want is we want to include and transcend the stage that we're in. We want to understand it and also help ourselves to see the limitations of it and look ahead and see what is a higher expression of the stage that I'm in. What is the next stage above me? What do I need to keep? What can I add on top to make my expression, my unique expression of masculinity or whatever that is, my version of myself, experiencing and showing up and participating in the experience of life? What does that look like? And what is the next evolution of that look like? How can I have the most complete, the most integrative, the most nuanced and full expression of myself in life? So lastly, never forget the real red pill isn't waking up to how women work or how the sexual marketplace works or how masculinity works. They're just parts of it. They're useful parts. We need to integrate them. We need to understand them. There's value there for us. But ultimately, the real red pill is waking up to how you work. And that's what this channel is all about. So if that resonates, stick around for more, and I'll see you in the next episode.